We are wrapping up another week in the markets, and it has been an interesting one to say the least. On today's show, we'll be discussing the latest around the Fed, Blackrock and their Bitcoin ETF, a Celsius liquidation, more trouble for finance. We're going to look into some of the charts as well. So please stay tuned for all of that. Before we get going, hit that like button down below, subscribe to our channel. Nothing that Kevin or I say is financial advice. We are not financial advisors. So please do your own research before making any buys or sells. Kevin, I'm on location. I'm at my in-laws' house, my mother-in-law's house. Got a nice little setup here. I'm afraid I'm going to tip too far back in this chair, though, so I can't get too animated today, or I could end up with a concussion. But a lot of news to wrap up the week. It's going to be a good one. How are you feeling about the markets as it sits today on Friday, 1 hour left in the trading day?
TradFi, I'm happy what I'm seeing. Obviously, it looks like we had some exhaustion, and like we were talking before the show, going into the holiday on Monday, there's no trading on Monday for TradFi. Not surprised. And again, we're 2 weeks out from the end of Q2, so it makes sense that we're starting to see some of that plateauing. Hopefully, again, this is only one day, so we'll see how the next few weeks play out. But today, this makes sense in terms of crypto. We'll get into it when we look at some of the charts, but I'm definitely not surprised by this bounce here. Did I expect it to land here? No, not necessarily. I thought there would have been a little bit more room to the downside, but we're going to look at the macro, see if the structure, if the targets remain the same. But as of right now, nothing really too crazy in terms of price. I feel pretty confident in my position still, and I'm excited to see what's what next week brings and see what the closes are for both crypto over the weekend and TradFi today.
Okay, so let's get into some of today's news. We had an earlier show yesterday, so some stuff came out after that as well. So we'll talk about that. We had two members of the Fed speak today, Governor Waller and Fed President Barkin, and both of them made it very clear that core inflation has not moved down enough for them to be comfortable to reduce rates anytime soon. And they're both on board with, if the data shows it, raising again. I think this should come as at no surprise whatsoever. But where I'm at with it is, this market needs to get a little bit of fear put into it. Like, if you look at some of the movement, if you look at how low the VIX has gotten, it's at 13.69%, 13.69 points right now. That's way too low. That's the lowest since January of 2020. That's,
Send it
3.5
lower.
years. That's nuts. Huh?
Send it lower.
Oh God. If you look at some of the valuations in tech, like the markets are not afraid of what the Fed is doing. The markets think that, the Fed will still cut rates low later this year, despite the fact that they said that rates are still going to need to be 4.5% by the end of 2024. That was just 2 days ago. Powell said that. So it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I think the markets are still just like overly optimistic. They're looking for something to be bullish about. We've seen these numbers come out, and core inflation, it's been stuck. Like, it's been really sticky for like 8 months. That's not what the Fed is hoping to see. So, if they pause here, if they do a skip and the data comes out and it's still sticky, they're going to have to look at doing another hike or two, or, God forbid we have to go to like 50 basis points. But I know it was Bullard, who's not voting this year, who kept stating that he thinks we need to get the funds rate up to 6%. The market does not have that priced in right now. And if it would get to 6%, it would probably hold there through the end of the year, maybe into Q1 of next year.
Yeah, let's be realistic. They're probably gonna. They're gonna do exactly what they're telling us, right? We kind of knew that there was potential for a pause last month. I think some of the Fed presidents had spoken before, obviously, the meeting. So again, two people speaking today obviously are probably hinting that there's going to be two more hikes, right? I don't think that's necessarily something that we should be fighting. Again, goes against the old age, motto, which is don't fight the Fed. But the markets definitely have been fighting the Fed recently, haven't they? They've, it's been, let's just not listen to these people. We're just going to do whatever we want, and that's fine. Do whatever you want. But again, I don't care how much you fight the Fed or anything like that. When it comes to economics, everything plays out the way it has been for the entirety of history. Situations always play out in certain ways. So if we're seeing a little bit of a rally here, there has to be a correction, right? Depends on what type of market that we're in, though. So if we're in a bull market and we see a little bit of a correction, that's what I would consider this place right now. And then obviously we would do the continuation. But for the time being, we are in a bear market. We're seeing a rally. So likely the correction is going to be to the downside. So I think the Fed is going to see that, money's still pouring into this, a lot of these assets. And I know that Powell doesn't want to crash the stock market. He doesn't want to break anything. That's his goal. But however, it's a double-edged sword where you can't have it one way and still, protect everything else that you're trying to do. You can't protect the markets if you're trying to bring down inflation. It's just it's the way it works, right? It's like, yeah, protect the markets, bring down inflation, and save jobs, right? Pick two of them. It's like that type of situation where you can't have
And
either way.
their
Not Burger
their
King.
mandate, their mandate is not to keep the stock market up. As I
Exactly.
said over and over again, their mandate is toward price stability
Mm-hmm.
and the labor market. So that is what they're gonna. You would think that is what they would base their decisions around, and if that means they have to pump the numbers up more to get prices down, and it's going to hurt the stock market, that would be their preferred approach. But we'll see.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Let's get into some news from yesterday afternoon. BlackRock filed for a BTC ETF with the SEC. So a lot of acronyms there. No spot Bitcoin ETFs have been approved before. Will the fact that BlackRock is the biggest money manager in the world sway the SEC's decision making? I have no idea. But it is, I guess, reassuring on the crypto side. For all the people who were saying crypto is dead, it's all going to zero, and who actually believed it, not people like you and me who are like, yeah, it needs to suffer a lot. I hope this is a little bit of reassurance that when the biggest money manager in the world wants to get involved in the Bitcoin game, it's probably for a reason, and it's not it's something that they see potential value in. So I think that is a reassuring thing for people who have been kind of worried about the state of the crypto market. Like, look beyond just the US and look at the fact that BlackRock does want to get a BTC spot ETF going. So I thought that was interesting. What are your thoughts on this, Kev?
I think it's again, I think it's funny because Larry Fink, obviously CEO of BlackRock. I remember when he was saying that Bitcoin and crypto is a scam. So now that they have
Yeah.
spot ETF, it's like, okay, this is the type of what do you call it, psychology you need to have in these markets, right? They're gonna want to do something bullish when the chips are down. They're gonna want to FUD everything when we're at 69,000. So yeah, crypto's here to stay. There's just gonna be a lot of people that are obviously betting against it and betting for it and trying to sway you into doing whatever they want. But the spot ETF I do think is bullish. But again, it's I don't think it's bullish for price right now. That's my opinion. Maybe in the short term, people are like, "Oh, let me buy some fucking Bitcoin. BlackRock's gonna be buying." It's like, all right, BlackRock probably has Bitcoin already, whether we know it or not. And also, do you think they want to be buying it right now at 26K when they know that it's probably going to be like 10K in a few months? I think they're willing to wait. They got the funds on the side. They'll be able to buy up a larger portion of it, and that would probably benefit them and their ETF a lot more if they buy at a cheaper price. And again, I don't necessarily believe that whales and all these people are buying right now. I think if anything, we're seeing a lot of retail buying, and it's off news similar to this, right? I don't know. You never buy the news. It's a buy the rumor, sell the news. And I think that this is bullish for maybe next day or so, but next week, I don't think it's really going to matter at all for price.
Ace, Randy, happy Friday. Good to see
Friday,
you guys.
guys.
Yeah, I agree. Long term, I think it's a positive, but right now, I don't think it's that big of a deal. What I do think will be a bigger deal in the short term is more news we got from Celsius.
Yep.
They announced that they will be selling all of their altcoins from all customers except for custody and withhold accounts starting July 1st and converting them into BTC and ETH. Now, I looked some of their bigger holdings. They have about 5.5 million Matic, 7.2 million Cardano, 400,000 Link, 134,000 Polkadot, and then what is I'm blanking right now. About 3.6 million XLM. I know that symbol. What am I talking about here?
Stellar.
That's Stellar. Yeah. So 3.6 million Stellar. So decent holdings there. They have some other ones as well, but that made up the majority of them. Converting those into BTC and ETH, I don't think that's going to be a huge price movement up for BTC and ETH. They'll definitely hurt the altcoins there, but it's it's interesting to see that And once again, like more confidence for me. And not that I need to, Celsius is the end all be all, obviously, but interesting to see this move happening.
Yeah, definitely. And again, like we'll get into the charts, Bitcoin dominance, right? That's the one thing we've been keeping an eye on. Had a really good run up today. You know, it's still up really high. Let's put it this way. It's not bullshit anyway. It's dangerously high. But selling these altcoins, that means that the market caps of these coins are likely going to drop because there's so much supply in the exchanges, and it depends if anyone buys it up. But we're going to see a lot of that money move into Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? So that's naturally going to bring up the dominance of those two against all other alts. And we're probably going to see, Bitcoin and Ethereum both take a pretty decent, maybe a few percentage points up over. I definitely think Bitcoin for sure is going to be shooting up a lot more. I don't think it's. I think it's far from over and from climbing. But again, this is just another thing that's giving me confidence that alts do not have the strength against some of the bigger assets in the space. They have nothing on ETH and they have nothing on Bitcoin, and that's just another sign that we're not in a bull market. In the bull market, we start to see the money from Bitcoin and Ethereum leave those and just transfer over into some of the alts, and it's just money washing nonstop. People trying to make as much money as possible. We're seeing the exact opposite from that right now. We're seeing everything go into Bitcoin if it's not going into USDT. So it's really interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, I think that was probably the biggest news that I saw yesterday and how it's going to affect price, at least going into the summer months.
And then on the news front, lastly, why don't you give us the latest from Binance? I know there's
Oh yeah,
been some layoffs happening. They're leaving the Netherlands. Tell us
yeah,
everything that's going on there.
yeah. So they're no longer in the Netherlands. They couldn't come to an agreement with the regulators there, Dutch regulators. So that's one thing. It's just another country that they're leaving. They've left quite a few countries recently. Canada, um, U.S. is the big question now, but we did see that in Binance U.S. they laid off about 50 employees, and then we saw that they were anticipating what's going to be a costly and lengthy legal battle with the SEC. So the reason that was important, I want to bring that up today, is because if something is extremely lengthy and it's going to cost you a lot of money, and Binance is losing a lot of money right now, like not being able to transact in some of these countries. Granted, they probably still could with a VPN. That's why that's why the U.S. is going after them because they didn't do enough to block U.S. customers. But at the same time, it's plus other stuff. But it's like, yeah, they're losing money. And obviously everyone loses money in a bear market if you're managing, that much in terms of funds. But they're losing a lot of money, and they have to find money somewhere. So whether it's True USD, like we talked about yesterday, being their stable coin of choice now, very similar to BUSD, or it's BNB. Obviously BNB, they owned, I believe, 70% of the entire supply. They might have to start selling some of that off to, survive, to keep everything running, especially if they're not making a lot of money. Volumes are extremely low. They're not making, as much money as they once were when it comes to transactional fees. I believe that Bitcoin and ETH were like for a while, transaction free. Like you didn't have to pay any fee on buying or selling it. So, if those are the only two that have volume, maybe something there changes. But for the most part, I think that they're going to be losing a lot of money soon. And, we could prop up the price for BNB for the short term. But if we can't make if the company is not sustainable internationally or in certain certain countries, then obviously they're going to have to find cash somewhere, and one of those sources likely will be BNB.
All right. That is all I had on the news front. I definitely want to look at Bitcoin dominance. Um, where do you want to start?
Let's
We'll
start
keep
with
the
your
chart
gem.
section. We'll keep it quick today, but
Yeah,
go ahead. What are you gonna say?
let's start with your gem. What was that? YPF.
Yeah.
All right, let's pull that one up. So, Jweb, I'll let you lead this one. Let me just pull it up on the charts, and then obviously this was your call, so this is all you.
Yeah. So this was one we had our Latin America episode on, I believe it was June 8th, June 7th or 8th. And this was one of the energy stocks that I found, when looking through some of the bigger projects in Latin America. And it's just had a really nice run. I hadn't checked it out in a while. I saw the price today, saw that it's up about 17% since we talked about it back, a week and a half or so ago. So pretty happy with that call of mine and the return that it's seen.
Yeah, that's huge, right? It's 17% from the low after you talked about it. It's up 20%. So that's really interesting to see. And again, we're seeing Look at these patterns. Let me just remove that. That's where you talked about it. And obviously this is where we are now. But let me remove this white line. So it was putting in what looks like a bull flag, right? Lower highs and lower lows. Then that structure ultimately breaks to the upside. We got it. And that's an insanely nice
That's
green candle.
a piss missile right up.
Piss missile 100%. If this does start to plateau around here, if you don't start seeing lower lows and lower highs, then likely this move is over. And then obviously these gaps probably will be filled at some point. But who knows? They might be in a bull market. It's winter in South America right now. Maybe it's a bull market down in South America right now too. So definitely really interesting to see this. But it's a really good call, and especially for an international stock. I mean, obviously it's on the New York Stock Exchange, but that's a pretty it's a pretty good one to find.
Yeah, I think some of these emerging market ones that we can trade here in the United States still have plenty of room. I sent you an article yesterday. I need you to go ahead and spring for Bloomberg so you can read some of these articles I sent you. But this was an interesting one that I hadn't considered, and it was about some of the economic impacts of, we're in an El Nino now, and not just how it impacts the weather, but how that in turn impacts economies and what that does. And spoiler alert, it's not great. So I want to dive into that a little bit deeper and discuss that next week, because I think that's another area that, while people are looking at, the Fed funds rate and the SEC's crackdown on crypto, those are things that we don't control, and we obviously don't control the weather either. But if we look at, previous El Ninos, what it did to the markets, and we can then act accordingly, that could give us a leg up there. So something we'll look at next week on one of the shows for sure, and try to figure out a few good bets from that standpoint.
Oh, absolutely. That sounds like something that sounds like a lot of fun talking about that. That's really interesting how weather can absolutely decimate or, improve markets. And I'm all for it during a bear market. Let's send this to zero. But yeah, I'm sorry. I always got to say that. Great call here. I
Always got to say it, man.
It's balls of steel, man. And never giving up. But yeah. I just pulled up the DXY right here, and we saw that we got that nasty red candle yesterday. We found some support on the 102.035. We wicked right off of it. Now we're in green. We're completely oversold on the daily, but if we look at the weekly, obviously we're coming down. Probably be somewhere in the middle by the end of today. Weekly closes in about 3 hours and 41 minutes, so we'll keep an eye on that, and then we'll talk about it more on Monday next week. But for the most part, yeah, we found support right here. Let's hope that this stays here. Worst comes worst, obviously we're going to come down to 100. Wouldn't be great, but we just got to keep in mind that anything can happen. But also the DXY is news based, right? So we can get one piece of news that absolutely shoots it straight up, similar to how we got one piece of news in the the euro absolutely just taking off a little bit yesterday, and that sent us straight down. So this thing is very similar to TradFi. It can shoot up based on news, but again, the structures are there. I think we are still in setup for bullish continuation. Right here is the target, 105.651. So whether we get it tomorrow or 3 weeks from now, I do think that is our direction, long term going into the end of this bear market. And again, 105 is just one piece of the puzzle. Obviously, there's a lot more higher targets going up. And that being said, let's go over to Bitcoin dominance, because I don't think it's absolutely hit.
So I want to talk.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about Bitcoin dominance, and kind of lead this discussion here. So I'm looking at it on the weekly right now, and we're at this 49.75 level, which we haven't touched since April of 21. And if we look back at June, almost exactly a year ago, we hit 48, and then it got knocked straight back down. We hit 48 back in March. We kind of chopped, and now we're on the way up again. So I'm really curious if we continue to see this bad boy take off even further now that we kind of, do you think breaking through 48 was a big level of resistance? And now that it's seen that push up through it, we're going to see this like skyrocket even further up into like the 50s or even maybe 60?
It'd be interesting. Yeah, so I definitely think it's going to go into the 50s, right? That's I'm going to be conservative about this one, because again, Bitcoin dominance is really weird, because sure, it could, follow structure. Like obviously this looks like trading patterns, but again, it's following the price of Bitcoin itself. But, there's events that could absolutely, just shoot Bitcoin dominance up, like, Terra Luna or something like that. That's I think that's what was going into it, right? Terra Luna collapsed, and we saw Bitcoin dominance shooting up here from May all the way till right around June when we did see the collapse. So something like that, where alts start to bleed, so maybe Bitcoin bleeds too, so the price shoots up. That's possible. But for here breaking this resistance, I think this is just these are tops. Obviously, every time we find that, we found some rejection, found rejection there, found rejection back here in July of 21. But for the most part, I think that's the fact that there was so many alts back in the bull run, and even last year, where last year is really when we started getting the bear market, where people started getting scared. There were so many alts that had just so much liquidity in them that it was holding Bitcoin back. So the fact that we finally broke above that 48 level, we're on our way to 50%, total market cap over all alts, the entire crypto market. That's giving me a sign that, okay, people are kind of done with some of these stupid alts. There's not as much liquidity in them. People are looking for the safe bets. And for some reason, people still want to buy, which is wild to me. But if they want to buy, they feel, okay, Bitcoin seems like the safe bet because the SEC hasn't said shit about it. Bitcoin's been here for a long period of time. Look, it's going up right now. How can it possibly lose? I don't want to miss out on anything. So I think that's driving a little bit of Bitcoin dominance pushing up, and why it's not finding as much resistance as it once did back in like 2022, even in 2021, right? Just people are trying to play the safe bet. They're not sure if we're in a bull market now. A lot of people do think we're in a bull market, but I think that along with some of the banking fears and a lot of stuff that's happened over the past few months, Bitcoin dominance has not seen as much resistance as it probably should have. That being said, I think this is going to go up a lot higher. I think the 200 EMA right now is at 51.22%. We have a little bit of resistance. Man, that was a terrible stutter, man. Got to work on that. But resistance is right here, and it's at the 200, and the resistance here. Obviously, we found some support. Now we're below that, so obviously support became resistance. We're gonna have to hit this. I think that we're gonna see 51.22 for sure. That's one thing I feel confident in. Maybe that's from Celsius selling off assets. That would be not a ton, but it's enough to finally push us up just a little bit more. Do I think we're gonna go to 60? It really depends. So it depends, because this is the weird thing right now. Bitcoin could potentially, I want to look at the charts for Bitcoin too. It could see a bit of a bounce here, right? I still believe the target is 22 to 23. That's the next move before we see a true, bounce. But even if it does bounce a little bit here, it goes to, 26.8. I think currently Bitcoin is somewhere around 26.3. That might be enough to push it above 50%, right? So say we were at 50% there at 26.3, then we drop all the way down to 22, 23. Bitcoin dominance could still stay extremely high. It could actually increase, right? Because there's so much liquidity being drained from all these alts. The fact that it's right now around 50%, and alts are not really able to move up because of these trading pairs, and a lot of people are just moving everything into Bitcoin because it's the one that's pumping. That could bring us, higher. That could bring us at 51.32 along with Celsius, and the target right now is still 10K. So between now and 10K, how much would Bitcoin dominance have to increase to the point where, we pretty much go drop 16K in the market, and, for the price of Bitcoin? It would be a ton. The Bitcoin dominance would be extremely high. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Again, I say it depends. I've actually moved a lot of my targets over for some altcoins too, just because we've moved fast pretty much in the entire market. And while I do think that there's going to be corrections and bounces, I think that for the most part, Bitcoin dominance is going to increase, which means that a lot of these bounces and corrections for these alts are not going to go as high. And, the more Bitcoin drops and the altcoins drop even harder, I think Bitcoin dominance naturally is just going to keep going up. So it's kind of a messed up situation where you can't really win in this situation. Even if Bitcoin goes up, alts are going to get hurt. Bitcoin goes down, alts are going to get hurt. Dominance is going to go up either way, in my opinion. I think that we are just in a point where it's like almost a bull market for Bitcoin dominance, and it's like, oh, there is no resistance at this point. We're, you know what I mean? It's really a hard battle to look at the charts and say that, oh, this is going to this level specifically. I think it's going to this just because the 200 EMA is there, but for the most part, I think that we are just in a place where if we break above that, I mean, we could be 60% again. So
the volumes are just so low on pretty much everything. Like the
exactly.
alts, Jesus, this chair. The alts, the volume. Look at the trading volume now compared to even a few months ago. Like it is in the toilet.
Like here,
it's so bad.
Yeah, I mean, look at this this is the weekly, right? Look how high it was back in March, and now look where it is now. right? And that's why we're not seeing. And as soon as we got into that supply zone that we talked about up here, and again, I know I got a lot of shit on my chart, but there's a lot of things that are lining up. But I know this is like just charting,
I watched the new Ant-Man Quantum Mania, and it wasn't as colorful and eye-catching as your charts are, and that's saying
Oh,
a
thank
lot because
you.
they're in the quantum realm. So, it's interesting to see the stylings of your chart being
Well,
more colorful than a lot of these Marvel movies.
well, this is the quant realm. Okay, this is where
The
all the money's.
quantum.
This is where all the money's made, Jweb. But yeah. So looking at this right now, obviously, the volumes were highest on this push to the upside right here, right? And we got to the point where, we started tapping the supply zone. And then this little push up to the upside is 100% retail. This is Binance. This is Binance and whatever other institutional players wanted to prop the price up that much. It's 100% them, right? So we look on the weekly, we got rejected from the supply zone, and we're putting in this parallel channel here, right? This is a bullish. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a bull flag, right? We're putting in lower highs and lower lows to the point where we're finally going to find, we're going to break out of this at some point. My question is, where do we break out? Obviously, the weekly stochastic RSI is almost oversold. We're going to probably be oversold by the end of, the week close this Sunday. But at the same time, if we look at the daily, we got some room to the upside, but we got a lot of resistance up here too. We got resistance here at 27,233. That's where we got rejected from last time, right over here. We got resistance here on the 50 moving average on the daily. And we're also in this parallel channels. That means that this top trend line is resistance as well. We also are trading between the 50 and the 200 EMA on the daily. That doesn't give me a lot of confidence. It seems like we're contracting. We're waiting for a big move at some point. What is that move? I think a lot of people are scared that this move is to the upside, that we're going to go to 30K. Is that possible? 100%. I don't necessarily know if it's going to go up or down. I can tell you the direction of what the market and the money is looking like. But when I look at this and I see the stochastic RSI is undervalued, I think a lot of people are probably going to be going long. I think a lot of the people that were going short went short late, got liquidated on the past 2 days, this move. Do I think they close their positions? Maybe. I think people are very irrational. They definitely are going to freak out if they are getting close to liquidation. It's like, oh no, I was wrong. We're in a bull market. It's very valid, right? I think we could see this 200 EMA, the 50 EMA on the daily, which is 26,867, get tapped. And then I think we could find rejection, try and find support once again on the 200 EMA. But I do still think that 22K is our next move. Again, that's in the macro, right? Short-term volatility, it's going to happen. But I think that this lines up with our demand zone, which would be right down here. And that would fill this huge gap that we created back in March of 2023. And with that being filled, I think we get all the liquidations down here. And then a lot of people will be getting really scared and they might short the market. But obviously, I think that's where we're going to find our bounce. That would be ideal. That's a situation I would like to see. That would best support, this head and shoulders pattern that I've been talking about. But I don't negate the fact that we could potentially see, one more push into the supply zone. It's very possible. I could be wrong on this head and shoulders pattern. And this could be, just another bear flag. And this is the last move to the upside. This could be a 5-wave move on the macro. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, then 5 into here. I don't necessarily see that being the reasoning for where we are right now. And again, a lot of that is, like we talked about last Friday, volumes are extremely low. I don't see anyone pushing the price up that high. I just don't. And we can talk about BlackRock doing it. BlackRock's smarter than all of us. Let's be honest. They're not going to be buying Bitcoin at 26K. No one's really buying 26K Bitcoin if they're extremely wealthy right now. We're seeing whales absolutely just, offloading, and we're seeing retail pumping up the price a lot. It's just what it is. And, for seeing this, I think that we still have this move to the downside. Again, this could play out in 2 weeks. It could play out tomorrow. Really depends. I don't think it's going to be when we expect it. It's going to be something that we least expect, similar to how we saw, what was it? When did Bitcoin drop to sub 25K? Was that Wednesday?
Yeah.
It was Wednesday, and then last week we saw, all the alts drop. Just pretty much whenever big money wants to absolutely get out, that's what they're going to do. Keep an eye on supply. We're seeing tons of supply still dropping onto these exchanges, and they're not going to likely sell when the chips are low, right? They're probably sold already, or they're selling now because they expect it to go lower. Just, psychology of how people are trading. People with a lot of money, they don't want to lose. They usually don't lose. That's why they have a lot of money. So we'll keep that in mind. But yeah, I think Bitcoin right now, we're going to see how this closes on the weekly. We got a lot of resistance in this area, so it's probably going to contract a little bit. And then, whether this goes up or down, I do expect Bitcoin dominance to increase significantly. And last thing I will look at is USDT dominance. We can see that the price of Bitcoin started pushing up. So naturally, USDT dominance started dropping down. It was just a lot of money on the sides. So we'll see if this plays out. If we're going to find some support on the daily, that's a huge gap between here and there. I don't necessarily think that's going to be filled. We're not going to test a 50 moving average, but I do think that we are seeing this correlation between Bitcoin dominance, Tether dominance, and then the price of Bitcoin and the price of the DXY all working together to give us the best bet of seeing where the money's coming from, where it's going, and where it's going to end up, and where it's going to drag price.
Okay. With Bitcoin, I feel like we're going to be at this point very soon where we're just like chopping in this range. And so to me, what I'm looking at doing is taking some profit on some of these tech stocks, because I think the tech stocks are, we see in a lot of cycles like crypto dumps before the stock market. So I don't hate the idea of taking some profit on the tech stocks that have overperformed over the last year. If you look at Meta, Tesla, Netflix, Nvidia, one of my biggest, my biggest holding period, maybe even Apple. And I wouldn't sell my whole position, obviously, but just me personally, taking some off the top there and using that money to slowly accumulate Bitcoin on some of those bigger red days that we're going to see. Like, I know that you're not a fan of DCAing. I think for most people, I turned my DCAs off a while ago, like maybe even a year ago. I just, I didn't feel comfortable at that time as the prices started moving back up. But we're getting back to that point where, we see Bitcoin going down to 22, 23. I'll probably accumulate a little bit. We see it go down further, I'll accumulate some more. So I think for most people, their best bet is to not try to catch the falling knife, but be comfortable, as we get sub 25 again, sub 24. If you got cash on the side that you want to deploy in a Bitcoin, I don't hate it. I know that you're waiting to buy until we're sub 20. We don't know if it's going sub 20. Like, we can think all we want that it's going to, and we can have a high degree of confidence that it's going to, but that doesn't mean that it absolutely will. So I'm just going to toss that out there for most people. Like, this is probably a good time to have a number in mind that, okay, when it hits this level, I'll make a buy. When it hits this level, I'll make another buy. Because we don't know how long an accumulation phase could last, right? Like, could we drop and we're in an accumulation phase for 9 to 12 months? Sure. Could the Bitcoin actually have an impact next year and we're only in an accumulation phase for 3 months? That's also a possibility.
Sure.
So just something to keep in mind is, like, it's really easy when the price is going down to be like, oh, I'm going to wait for it even further. I'm going to wait even further because I want to catch the absolute bottom. But if you're one of those people who thinks that in 5 years, 10 years, Bitcoin is going to be 100K plus a piece, don't worry about catching the absolute bottom. Like, just start to add to your position once you're at a comfortable number and stick to that. So that's just the last thing I wanted to put out on that front. We talk about a lot of like where we think it's going to bottom out, but most people, you're never going to catch the bottom. 99% of the time, you're not going to catch the bottom. So just know where you're comfortable buying and how long you're going to be holding it for, and just let things play out.
Yeah, I mean, you said it better than I probably could have, and more reasonable than I probably could have. So I think that's a great way to end the show.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up just like that. Thank you, everybody, for being here with us this week. We'll be back next week. If you have not yet, hit those buttons down below. Like the stream, subscribe to our channel, drop a comment, and share us out on social media. So all of those things are greatly appreciated as we try to grow our audience here. It means a lot to us. Have an excellent weekend, everyone. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you next week.
Take care, everyone.